Welcome back to UC Davis Live. I'm Satirius Johnson. Colleges and universities across the country have worked aggressively to stop the spread of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, and safely bring students back to campus and in-person classes. Most of these efforts include testing and support services, but only for students, faculty, and staff. But UC Davis and the City of Davis have taken a different approach that acknowledges the reality that campus life and city life are interconnected and intertwined. It's called Healthy Davis Together, and it's a joint project of the City of Davis and UC Davis, aimed at getting the community through the pandemic with extensive free testing, free face masks, and protective equipment and services for people in isolation or quarantine. This unique community-focused program has been attracting national attention. Today, we're going to be talking about Healthy Davis Together with two people involved in setting up and running the program. Todd Stoltz is Director of Business Development at UC Davis Health. At Healthy Davis Together, he's part of the executive team that shapes the project's strategy and oversees implementing it. He also leads the Innovations and Technology Core, along with environmental monitoring and the work with local K-12 schools. And Mike Webb is City Manager for the City of Davis and co-chair of the Advisory Committee for Healthy Davis Together. As City Manager, he directs the city administrative departments and supports the City Council. For Healthy Davis Together, he manages all of the activities on behalf of city staff that are within his oversight. Thanks to you both for coming on today.
Great to be here. Thank you very, very much for having us, and really glad to engage on this important topic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind viewers that this is a free webcast. You can watch it live and watch it after the live broadcast on the UC Davis Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels. We're aware of others posting links saying that you have to pay to watch this video. Please do not click on those links. This is a free webcast. And we are taking audience questions. So if you're watching us live, just leave them in the comments section and we'll work in as many as we can. So Todd, let's start with you. What's the big idea behind Healthy Davis Together?
So that question sounds a little bit like I was getting in trouble with my mother, right? Which is, what's the big idea behind all
right?
So, in fact, it's timely because there was a New York Times article about this just yesterday, which is, unless a college or a university or a business even exists in isolation from its surrounding community, you're not going to be able to protect it from COVID unless you're protecting the entire community. And so when we at UC Davis Health and on the UC Davis campus started talking more about this, we started engaging with Mike about, what's the city doing? UC Davis was actually, or the City of Davis was actually listed in, I think it was a US News and World Report article back in April or May last year about being one of the most vulnerable cities to the COVID pandemic because the city and the university are so intertwined. And if the university retreats, the city gets left pretty vulnerable there. So we started really engaging with Mike about, what could we do together to make sure that we're keeping each other safe. And there's a lot of anxiety around the country about students returning to universities and bringing the virus with them and then spreading it within the community. Obviously, UC Davis wanted no part of that, right? We wanted to be good community citizens with the City of Davis. It's such a great city. So we started engaging with Mike about thinking, what could the university be doing? What is the university doing? And how could we work with the city to help protect the entire community? And we have some advantages within the state of California about being able to sort of draw a geographic boundary around Davis and say, look, that's Davis, as opposed to a lot of other cities that it's hard to differentiate where one city ends and where another one begins. So we thought we could make a good case for going out to maybe raise a little bit of philanthropic money to help us with supporting this project and this concept, and deploying money that the university maybe had, and maybe some of the CARES Act money that maybe was flowing to the city, we could help strategically deploy around trying to protect everybody. So that's the fundamental idea, and we can get into more questions later about it.
Right. So, why don't we go through some of the key components of the program?
So the biggest component is this concept currently, I think it's abundantly clear, but at the time, especially back in June, July, when we were really thinking hard about this, really being able to get everybody access to asymptomatic testing, right? And it really important to be able to capture people in their asymptomatic phase, right? When they're shedding virus, it being able to infect other people, but they feel great, right? They don't know they're sick. So if you wait until they're symptomatic, you've probably lost at least 3 days, maybe 5 days, maybe even more for some of these asymptomatic spreaders that never get symptoms. So to be able to catch those people early, remove them from the community, and keep them from spreading the virus around is the fundamental way you're going to protect the community, right?
Right. And just to be clear, at that time, there was very little asymptomatic testing across the country because people were told, don't get tested unless you have symptoms, right?
Yes, and this was the fundamental tension, right, at the time, and we were fortunate that Dr. Richard Mitchell-Moore in his lab was building up a very scalable testing platform that could be used for asymptomatic testing at a large scale, right? And so we were eager to see how we could deploy that, not only within the university, but within the city, to take advantage of that massive platform that you know, Dr. Mitchell-Moore had built.
Right. And part of the problem of testing people en masse was that there just wasn't the capacity, right?
Precisely.
Nationwide or most places. But fortunately at UC Davis, there was an infrastructure being built up.
Yes. And so then you've got to layer on to that. Well, once you find somebody that's tested positive, well, what do you do with them, right? So you've got to have very quick, effective contact tracing. And you got to be able to reach out to those people and then reach out to their contacts so that you can figure out who else might need to be quarantined. And then, of course, you've got to be able to quarantine and isolate people. So if they're suspected of having it, they get quarantined. If they are definitively, if they have it, then they get isolation. So we developed partnerships with apartment owners and hotels in town to be able to offer quarantine and isolation services to these people. So if they really needed to get out of whatever living environment they're in, if they're living in a multi-generational home, if they're students living in a crowded house, we can move them out so that they could safely quarantine and isolate, right? And then, you know, there's a bunch of other services that you need to think about, you know, once you've got people in those homes, but also just broad messaging to the community about safe behaviors. I would be willing to bet most people that live in Davis have seen at least one of our ads or our signs about Healthy Davis Together. You know, stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, wash your hands, right? We've saturated the Davis environment with that sort of marketing and messaging, and we're going to keep driving that for as long as we need to.
Right. Symptom-free does not mean COVID-free. That's another message I've been seeing lately.
My personal favorite one was the Valentine's Day one where we said, you know, we'll swap spit with you because the testing platform is, of course, a saliva-based PCR test that we were doing. So we have a lot of people going to spit in tubes, right, in our various testing centers.
Right, right. So how is all of this helping Davis residents stay healthy?
So there's a couple other components, and I'll get.
Okay, please, let's finish those.
No, it's fine, because this is a good way to get to this. One of which is, you know, keep it the obvious one, which we've mentioned, right, is just keeping people who are asymptomatically shedding virus out of the community as fast as possible, right? We remove them, we get them into a safe environment, and we stop them from shedding virus and spreading it around. 2, right, we've got APAs that are now going out around the community to be able to show what are safe behaviors. So these APAs are Aggie Public Health Ambassadors. There's about 300 of them. These are students from UC Davis that have agreed to become a part of these ambassadors that are going out not only on campus, but in the community to sort of evangelize safe behaviors. And we've actually given them gift cards so they can incentivize and reward safe behaviors at sort of a random basis that they see around the city or around the campus. And they can answer people's questions. They can, you know, give definitive answers around why it is important to wear a mask, why social distancing, why 6 feet is important. And just try to constantly reinforce that, because strangely enough, there is misinformation that flies around the internet occasionally, and people don't necessarily have the correct information. So having a army of people that could go out and help with that has been tremendously beneficial. And then another thing that we're doing is monitoring wastewater. So I think everybody has heard, you can detect COVID in wastewater, and you can loosely quantify it in wastewater. So now we're doing wastewater monitoring at the city scale, and we're doing it at the neighborhood scale. So we can pick up when, maybe your neighborhood has sort of gotten to be higher than what we would expect in a normal COVID level. So we can help respond within that neighborhood by encouraging those people, go get tested, maybe get tested twice this week if you're only testing once a week, right? So that we can figure out where that infection is coming from. The other thing we can do is we're picking up the new variants, right? The B117 variant is a concern. The B1351 variant is a concern. So now with both our symptomatic or asymptomatic testing, we can pick up the new variants. Any positive is immediately genotyped to figure out if it's got a new variant that we're getting. And our wastewater monitoring allows us to screen for new variants. So we can keep the community safe, right? By implementing all of these programs sort of all at once. And that's getting back to your first question. That was really the big idea, right? Yeah. Which is, can we implement all of these things at once in one community to help keep the whole community safe? And really, we're not aware of anybody else in the country that's doing sort of this holistic approach.
And I'm thinking that the overall goal, I mean, you can't be 100% safe because, of course, there are no gates around the city of Davis. People are coming and going, but so people still have to socially distance. They still have to wear their masks, but you are, drastically reducing the chance that someone could get ill or have to be even hospitalized, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen that in the infection rates that are in the city. And by the way, I should also add on, anybody that works in Davis, even if they live outside of Davis, if they work here, absolutely eligible for our testing, right? And we're eager to sort of explore how we can expand that out even a little bit more than what we're currently doing. But anybody that's kind of coming into the city of Davis on a regular basis, we absolutely want them to get tested at least once a week and twice a week if that's appropriate for them. But that's exactly correct, right? Just wanting to be able to provide that safety net to the entire city.
Right. Again, we are taking audience questions. So if you're watching us live, just leave them in the comment section and we will work in as many as we can. Mike, what's had to happen behind the scenes to get this program up and running so quickly?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can hear from Todd's description of some of the key program components, a whole lot of collaboration and coordination, to be sure. We have an incredible wealth of expertise and knowledge between the university and our community, between UC Davis scientists, our city administration staff, campus administration staff. We have very engaged and proactive Yolo County health officials. We have the knowledge of the UC Davis health system and all the doctors and the incredible research that happens there. We have engaged local business leaders and community leaders. And so in that sense, Davis is really somewhat uniquely situated as a university town to have all of the right components in one place to pull together. It takes quite a bit of organization and collaboration, like you said, behind the scenes to make all of these things come to fruition. And that's been really, I think the environment for that has been made possible due to our leadership with Chancellor Gary May and our city council creating that atmosphere and that environment of collaboration that says to us, to Todd and to myself and all the others on our teams that have been involved in this, yes, let's make this happen. We have an obligation to make it happen. We have a responsibility to make it happen. And so that doesn't happen without that leadership, creating the environment for it. And so we have that. And that's been a key component, is that collaboration. We at the onset of this, we also set up an advisory committee, which I co-chair along with Mary Crowan, the provost from UC Davis. And that advisory committee we set up that involves representatives from a number of different sectors or stakeholder groups, if you will, in our community and on campus. Because we wanted to go into this with making sure that we have really good lines of communication with the community. And we use the advisory committee. It's made up of business leaders, community representatives, health advocates, religious leaders. If you can think of sort of a segment, if you will, of our community, it's represented: youth, elders, and so forth. And we utilize this organization, this group, and we meet on a regular basis as a sounding board to say, hey, what's working well with the Healthy Davis Together program? And we use that group to get feedback, and they're sort of the conduit to provide feedback from all of their groups, out there in the community to help inform us, how are things going, and are there things that need adjusting? So the group has been terrific at suggesting new ideas and approaches and things that we may not have thought about at the staff level, that we can then go back and communicate and try out. But also on the flip side, they serve not only as a conduit to us at the staff level, they serve also as ambassadors to the community, because the power that they hold is their reach within our community. And all of the communication groups and channels that they have to help communicate out these messages of health and safety and good practices.
So as your advisory committee came together, were there any instances where like either you were surprised by some of the concerns of the university or community members, or maybe the university people were surprised or didn't realize that something was an issue that was maybe a hindrance and that you had to kind of figure it out?
Yeah, a little bit. I think there were a few things where the advisory committee has been very helpful around, for example, communications. And what works well, communication mechanisms and channels that work well for one group may not work well for another. Not everyone is necessarily on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And so, looking at, they actually were instrumental in saying, hey, let's maybe look at some of the more traditional channels of communication as well. How about some mailers or some postcards to folks, or ads in our local paper, all of which were in the mix, but it helped us to balance, how much of each of those different platforms we might want to utilize. And because we're using them all, believe me, as Todd said, we're saturating, the messaging big time. I'd say the other key point that Todd brings up with the saliva-based testing is that it's, to your point, Satiris, asymptomatic. And so I think one of the big surprise points for all of us, but especially where the advisory committee was able to be very instrumental, was in how many asymptomatic positive test outcomes the process has been able to capture through Healthy Davis Together testing. And it was fairly eye-opening to everyone to understand. I mean, it's in the hundreds, if not into the thousands of, Todd, if I'm not mistaken.
Thousands at this point. We're over 1,000 asymptomatically screened positive people that we were able to pull out of the community, right?
So people who did not know that they were carrying COVID and may have just gone about their day, and interacted with any number of people, but the testing was able to capture that and say, hey, you're carrying it. You may not have symptoms, but you're carrying it. Let's have you isolate and take care of yourself. And we provided support resources for them to do that in the community through those apartment units and hotel rooms and so forth that Todd mentioned.
That's incredible.
So that was the advisory committee was a very powerful tool in helping us to sort of promulgate that messaging of, even if you feel well, please test, and test frequently.
Yes, no, that's super important, because I mean, every one of those people who is asymptomatic yet positive, it's like, when you take them out of the community, it's like you're stamping out a spark in an area that is, could turn into a wildfire, right? Because one person, it's just an exponential spread of the virus, right?
One quick comment, if you don't mind. First off, it's summer, so don't start talking about wildfire.
I know. Well, hey,
too early, too painful. But secondly, I just wanted to point out, Mike's being unnecessarily modest. his leadership and the leadership of the mayor have been spectacular to help us with getting this project launched and having us work effectively with his team throughout the city. So just wanted to point that out.
So for other like cities, other university towns that may be watching and may be interested in trying something like this themselves, I mean, how did this get paid for? Who stepped up and who, this sounds like it could be a very expensive proposition.
So it's a constant ongoing discussion, but there's a little bit of money that the university was able to put in. I think there was some CARES Act funding that was coming to the city that they were able to contribute. Obviously, the city, their budget's been ravaged, and Mike was very articulate at the early part of this, which is, look, we'd love to participate, but we don't have a lot of money to participate because our budget's been really hit hard by the economic slowdown. But we were fortunate that the university had some money. The university had already made a big investment in this testing platform. So to be able to scale it up wasn't a huge lift in additional cost, right? A lot of the fixed costs had already been captured. And then we were able to find some philanthropic support from some very interested philanthropists who wanted to see a project like this sort of take off and see how it would work. And one of the key outputs for us of that is being able to use Davis as a demonstration project for what other cities need to be doing or can be doing either in this pandemic or the next one, that hopefully won't come for a long time. But if it does, we'd like to have a playbook ready for how a city can respond effectively to that.
Right. So what role so far can we say at this point is Healthy Davis Together playing in keeping businesses open and getting schools to reopen?
Yeah, I can jump in on that, starting with perhaps the business side of it. So there's a whole arm of Healthy Davis Together called Healthy Davis Together Partners, which has been focused on business support for our local businesses who have been hit very, very hard. As I think everyone knows out there across the country and across the world, that many businesses have had to shut down completely. Some have had to really scale back and curtail their activities to outdoor only, for example. Other businesses have had to really modify how they go about business, and both with their creating safe environments for their employees, but also with their interactions with customers. And so Healthy Davis Together has offered, has had the opportunity to offer grants for businesses to assist them in operating safely. And that's the focus is, businesses were faced with new costs in order to pull in personal protective equipment for their staff, gloves, cleaning supplies, face coverings, shields at registers and between tables. And in Davis, we've had a big push for trying to move as much business activity outdoors as possible. And our weather permits that, much more so than many parts of the country, of course, being in California. But so those things all incur expenses that many businesses, if not all, were really not in a position to incur. And so these grants have helped the businesses with those specific needs. And it absolutely has been the difference for many businesses that we've received survey feedback and testimonials from. It's been the difference between them staying in business and needing to close shop. So it's literally met the difference between livelihoods of many businesses and employees in town. We've also employed, as Todd mentioned earlier, incentive programs for things like testing and good, healthy, safe behaviors in our community via distribution of gift cards to folks in town that are good at local businesses that are participants in our programs. It does require some commitment from the businesses too, that they will commit to safe practices, as are recommended. And so it's a mutual relationship there. They commit to the safe practices. They are eligible for some of these grant resources and the gift card programs. Those gift card programs have helped our businesses tremendously. There's some really good examples that I would be happy to share. where, a $5 or $10 gift card, for example, at a local restaurant that is set up outdoors, to go, food, acting very safely and appropriately, that can turn into $50 or $60 worth of purchasing power for that business, because rarely do you go there and only spend, $5 or $10, right? But it's like, okay, I feel as a customer, I know one thing, that this business is behaving safely, so I feel good about going there or patronizing that business. And while I'm here, I'm gonna spend some other dollars, and so it's had a huge leveraging power to really help our businesses stay afloat. I'll say on the other side of businesses, not so much the retail, like retail and restaurant side, but on the service side of industry in Davis, we have many apartment complexes, as you might imagine, in a university town, to serve housing needs here. And there was one story of a local apartment owner, a property owner, who's on our advisory committee, who shared a story with us that his maintenance worker staff for his apartment complex, through the Healthy Davis Together testing, saliva-based testing, they were able to identify, in that case, a positive test of one of their maintenance workers early enough and quickly enough that they could, again, keep that maintenance worker out of apartment units and going in and infecting who knows how many, folks in the community. So that's a good example, not only of the safe practices that Todd was talking about and that sort of isolation and early identification of cases, but it's an example of a local business, in this case, an apartment complex, just being responsible and saying, hey, they really wanted their staff to get tested. So lots and lots of good examples of that collaboration with our business community. The feedback from the business community has been nothing short of just absolutely laudatory of these opportunities to help them.
Yeah. So let me ask you, as vaccinations become more available, is Healthy Davis Together either requiring or encouraging businesses to have their employees, especially the publicly facing ones, vaccinated to be, to get some of these incentives and get some of the support?
So on two elements of it. On the testing side, we're strongly encouraging the testing. And we have been from day one, really, really pushing that messaging as Todd described on the testing. And that's true of our city organization too. At the end of the day, the city of Davis, we provide a multitude of services to the community as you might normally expect of a city. Many of which are very essential, to a healthy, safe community. Provision of water, sewer, fire and police services, and stormwater runoff, and all these things that cities do. So we also have we have our staff. We have a staff of about 350 city employees that we really encouraged and provided sort of incentives by saying, do this on city time. Get your test on city time. And we also made it as convenient as possible. The test itself, could not be easier. As Todd said, you spit in a little tube. And you get the results back in 24 hours, oftentimes less. So it's incredible turnaround. It's in accuracy. So that's been a big element of it. But there's also this component of, with the testing, to encourage the testing even after vaccines. And I know Todd I think we'll talk about that in a little bit here, and Todd can certainly elaborate on that concept, because that's a little new to some people, I think, or many people. But as far as vaccines go, as a community, we're not requiring, vaccines per se. There are those in the world that, are interested in, I think the vast majority of folks are interested in fact, receiving the vaccine. There are some who aren't. And so we're not in a position where we're forcing the issue, but I think we're finding a great the great majority of people want to receive a vaccine, get it. And so what can we do to help encourage and empower that to happen and facilitate it? And that's really our focus.
But you're strongly encouraging people to get vaccinated. So yeah, that was going to be my next question is like, so, as more and more people who work and live in Davis are getting vaccinated, you're saying that they should still get tested once a week.
Absolutely. So, everybody knows, I think the news is everywhere about the vaccine effectiveness rate. So far, none of the vaccines are 100% effective, right? So even if you get vaccinated, there's still a chance you could get infected. So that's one big issue. Second is there's still not definitive evidence that even somebody who's vaccinated can't still carry the virus in their airway, let it develop and replicate, and then shed that virus, even though they're not ever going to get sick. So you could be an asymptomatic spreader effectively of the virus, right? So you absolutely should get tested to not only, understand your own health, but also the health of the people you live with and your friends and family, right? So no doubt, get tested, continue to get tested. And we plan to continue to offer free asymptomatic testing, for as long as we can. And you did ask, I'll just talk quickly about the school district work. Everybody knows kids are not able to get vaccinated yet, right? The vaccines are still being evaluated for safety and efficacy in kids. So our plan is to be able to test within the Davis Joint Unified School District, all the kids at schools once a week through the end of this year. We hope we can pull together enough support to be able to get that done. We think we can. So that's our plan, is to be able to support the school district with getting all the kids tested at least once a week at school to make it as safe and as easy for them as we possibly can. And the school district has been a tremendous partner in trying to help work with us to get that up and running at all the schools within the city. Right.
And then there's when might that happen? What are you hoping for?
So the schools, as we all know, are coming back to hybrid learning on April 12th. So our target date, and we're already actually testing small cohorts of kids and staff that are going to school already for various reasons, right? So we're testing at schools there, and that's been a nice pilot to get up and running there. But the April 12th deadline for hybrid learning, returning to hybrid learning is an important goal for us in the school district to be able to support getting, our testing platform up and available to them, every kid that's going to be returning to hybrid learning. And it's tricky because kids are going in two forms, right? They're going either on the Monday, Tuesday, or the Thursday, Friday cohort. So to get everybody coming to school tested once a week, we've got to go test twice a week. And we're testing half the kids each time, right? But we're figuring that out. It's actually complicated logistically to get sorted out, but the school district's been tremendous at helping us work on that. And then there's a bunch of other things that we're doing to also work with the school district around safe behaviors, safe classrooms. We've put air filters in all the classrooms. After doing some analysis, Professor Jonathan Eisen, who's a sort of an expert on this topic, sort of looked at the airflow in the general typical classroom within DJUSD and sort of recommended some specific air filters. And in fact, we ended up buying 2 per classroom. Those are going to be important to help keep the air quality up in the classroom safe. We're doing a lot of work around symptom monitoring within schools. As students come back, teachers and staff need to be aware of what symptoms to be looking for, maybe where they can help families with messaging around symptom monitoring. We're doing a little bit of environmental monitoring. We're doing some pilots, what I would describe as of environmental monitoring, testing the air filters that we're putting in the classrooms. We're going to be able to test them to see if one of those pops up positive for COVID. Well, that means somebody in the classroom was positive. And so if we're not catching everybody with our asymptomatic testing, maybe we'll catch them on that air filter testing. So we're doing some pilots of that we hope we can scale up over time to get to the rest of all the classrooms within the lower K through 6 schools. And then we're doing some additional work around just education, again, bringing the APAs, the Aggie Public Health Ambassadors, to the DJUSD campuses to help with education around safe behaviors and why, the kids need to be doing the things that they're doing. And then there's all the PPE and stuff that we're working with them as well on.
I mean, it's it needs to be, it's just amazing that, you're not just like throwing air filters into classrooms, like you are, the university and the town coming together to actually scientifically, determine what would help, and then not just leaving them in there, but then testing the filters afterwards to make sure. So I mean, this multi-pronged approach of just constant monitoring in many different ways, educating people. I mean, it's really quite comprehensive, and it's just something to be lauded. I mean, a lot. I mean, it's just quite incredible. We have a viewer question from Her Young on Facebook asking, "It's great news that Yolo County is now in the orange tier. However, I am concerned about the return of many on-campus residents coming back from spring break with self-quarantine orders. I think it would be potentially higher risk if many facilities and capacities are opened up when residents return, which would be tempting for them to utilize, and they have not self-quarantined and tested for 2 weeks yet. In addition, students living in the city do not have the self-quarantine orders from campus. What steps will be taken to address return from spring break and the impact from orange tier?"
Those are tough questions.
Yeah.
But these are the questions we've been grappling with, since July of last year, thinking about exactly these issues. So I can't speak to what the campus policy is around students, UC Davis students returning from points abroad. I can point out that Sherry Atkinson's team on the campus had that really, really well effective program where they were offering students $75 to not travel, right? One of our best incentive programs ever was to have a staycation, right? Stay here in town. We'll give you $75, get tested while you're here, and don't go to Miami, right? Don't go to an unsafe place and then bring the infection back to town. But it's an absolute concern, right? And so we have to rely on people messaging and communication around safe behaviors. When you do return, please quarantine, please get tested. That's what we can contribute to this. It's just the messaging and the testing platform around safe behaviors.
Yeah, and I think that's all absolutely true, Todd. And so there again is, with Healthy Davis Together, we're creating the opportunities and creating the what I'll call the enabling environment for people to choose the safe route as opposed to not. And that means having things as convenient as possible. For the testing, for example, that's a huge part of this, is the testing being as convenient as possible in as many various locations as possible. We have at least 4 testing sites, including the Mondavi Center on campus, so that in multiple locations in the city, so that we start to take away the excuses, if you will, for people to not test or to not have self behaviors. I will say that as Soterios, as you mentioned at the beginning of this forum here, there was, I think Davis was ranked very high, like number 4 in the nation in terms of communities of concern, partly because of all that sort of international travel. There's travel coming, students and folks coming from all over the country, all over the world to attend UC Davis. There was, I will say, a genuine concern and fear from folks in our community that, the student behaviors would be such that, things would just spread and it would be this nightmare, as was described in that article early on. I will say that, very proudly, I think we not only bucked that trend, but flipped it on its head. And I'll say that the behaviors of our community and including our student population have been nothing short of spectacular. They really have. They've been absolutely responsible. Of course, there's always a little blip here and there, but when that happens, it gets nipped really quick, and there are consequences. If for students on and off campus that from the rules that they need to abide by as being a UC Davis student, but by and large, folks have been responsible. And it's really been heartening to see that. As I'm out and about in town, you see folks even walking alone, they're wearing face coverings and and so forth. And it's just really heartening to see the era of responsibility that people have taken on. And I think it's in large part because of the environment. It's because of the that we've created here of responsibility, of high expectations, and again combined with enabling tools and taking away the excuses to not behave and act appropriately.
Right. So, how is Davis doing so far with this, all of these prongs of, attack? Are there metrics that you're looking at that are telling you that it's working or it could be working better?
So there are metrics we can all look at, because at healthydavistogether.org, we've got our testing data, our positivity rate, all there for anybody to see that wants to see it. We've also got our wastewater testing data by neighborhood there for anybody to see that wants to see it. But overall, it's hard to describe this as anything but very successful right now, right? Our positivity rate for asymptomatic screening is bouncing around 0 some days, right? And so, and those 0 days are getting more and more frequent for us. So that's incredibly heartening. Overall, our 7-day average positivity rate is somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. So it's very, very low. We're doing more testing than anybody else in the state by county, right? So that you can measure this by county across the state, because that's how the data flows. So, with just Davis driving all the testing we're doing in the city, our county, Yolo County, is doing more testing than anybody else in the state by far, right? It's not even close, right? And our infection rate, our positivity rate is much lower than anywhere else in the state, right? So we're moving, to the orange tier, and we're tantalizingly close to the yellow tier, which has its pluses and minuses. And your, question earlier was, related to some of those minuses about, more people coming in, more people feeling emboldened to behave perhaps inappropriately. But overall, very, very successful. We're very happy with how it's gone. Like Mike said, we've gotten, I think, very good feedback from the local business community. One other thing I might add onto his comments about that are a lot of the, especially some of the less focused facing businesses, they've had lots of questions about how do they need to operate safely. And we've been able to help them, with giving them some advice and some guidance around safe behaviors that we think will, continue on for a while to pay dividends with them. There's the other parts of our program too, is reaching out to some of the underserved populations, for some of the hard to reach populations. That's been a big area of focus for us. The city's been a tremendous partner at helping us to reach out to those, and we're starting to get more of them engaged and understand what's preventing them from getting tested, what's preventing them from participating in testing. So we have a mobile testing team that's now going out to do testing with certain populations that really just either don't want to or can't get to our testing sites. So we it's been tremendous, and we'll continue to do that work to sort of continue to stamp this down.
Right. We have another viewer question. Nanoy on Facebook asks, how accurate is the sampling design in the detection of SARS-CoV-2 in wastewater?
So look at the website. It's interesting, right? So there's 2 types of wastewater monitoring that we're doing within the city, right? So one is at the city wastewater treatment plant. We're taking samples from there every day and sending them to a lab to get tested. Those results are available on a daily basis. And I'm happy to share the link with anybody that's interested in it. UC Davis has its own wastewater treatment plant. Those samples are being taken daily and also monitored, right? Then we're also doing, and I'm not aware of any other municipality that is doing this at the scale we're doing within the city. We're deploying auto samplers at certain sections throughout the city. There's a map up on the website currently that shows. So we're auto sampling in different neighborhoods and testing twice a week right now. We'll probably increase that to 3 times a week. And we're testing samples, and you can see the data up there. The data are messy, right? I mean, we're still learning what this means. We're still learning what a little bit of an uptick in positivity in a wastewater sample, what's that mean? There's some clever ways that scientists have figured out how to sort of roughly quantify, how much of an infection you've got in a neighborhood or a municipality because of the rises that you see. But it's very informative for us to just get a general sense of how are we doing, right, within the pandemic. And you can actually see it very well if you go look at the City of Davis wastewater treatment plant sample website, where you had a spike around Thanksgiving, you had a spike around Christmas and New Year's, and it's been a pretty steady decline ever since. There was one sort of alarming spike that we're not sure what happened there, but it's been a pretty steady decline ever since. And now we're down with our wastewater testing, sort of mirrors what we're seeing in our asymptomatic testing. Very, very low levels of the virus. Not gone, still present, still concerning, but not gone.
Kabir on Facebook is asking, are there any plans to open up additional testing kiosks near entry points to Davis for spring comeback time and test everyone who gets in the city for those few days?
So we've been working the campus. There are people that are better equipped than I to talk about what the campus plan is, but the campus does have a plan for testing students who are returning. They have their plan for anybody that's accessing the campus has to get tested to be able to access any of the facilities on campus. So I think the students, especially the ones that are returning to campus, will be very well managed. It may not be the exact right term there, but they'll be very well tested and evaluated. Mm-hmm. Students that are returning to the city or other people that are returning to the city and are participating, maybe like I work from home 99% of the time, or they're attending classes online, it's a little bit harder to mandate testing for those people. So we can't, as Mike, I think, was saying, we can't mandate it, but we can make it as easy as possible. We are the DJUSD, actually, we're very excited that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we opened up a community testing site at Montgomery Elementary in South Davis, right? If you look at a map of the city, we sort of had a lack of city testing in South Davis, and Montgomery was a great site for us to do. And DJUSD was very, very gracious partner in saying, yeah, we'll work with you to open that testing up for the city-wide residents to be able to come in there and get tested. We are going to continue after the schools get opened, after our focus there, because we're intensely focused on getting school testing done. After that's done, we will look at see what else we can do to sort of expand testing around the city to, again, make it easier for people to go get tested, to take away any possible excuse they might have for not getting tested.
Heather on Facebook is asking, when will the age group's eligibility be changed for vaccinating more of the community? We have a lot of workers, construction, transportation, et cetera, that have exposure, but aren't yet in the eligibility groups.
Yeah, and I can start with this one, Todd, and then please add on anything that you'd like. Yeah, really the testing or the vaccine rollout is really subject to state and county guidelines as far as the eligibility. And of course, right now, the core issue is the availability of vaccine supplies. And that's been sort of the number one issue that precludes it from being available to everyone at the same time, is that there's only so much vaccine to go around. You know, the supply chains have been more constrained, especially at the beginning. We're starting to see that free up a bit more now. And we are, I think, going to be in a place, I suspect, starting next month in April, just based on what we're hearing from the Biden administration with respect to, you know, everyone, that goal of everyone in the nation being eligible to have an appointment for a vaccine, you know, come May. And so I think we anticipate a roll up, if you will, of vaccine availability. So we don't, in Davis and between campus and the city, we don't control the who's eligible for vaccines. That's really controlled as most things like that are at the county health officer level and the state based on supplies. But where we do have the capability to work together and again to leverage Healthy Davis together is in helping to do whatever we can to help facilitate the delivery and the administration of those vaccines. And Todd can speak to that a little bit more, in that all this infrastructure that we've put together as part of Healthy Davis Together can also be utilized for delivering vaccines. And so there's a huge supply of resources there, if you will, of people, of trained professionals, of facilities, and so forth, that if and when the supplies of vaccines, become more greatly available, Healthy Davis Together can be a resource to help administer those. Todd, anything you may wish to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, right? Dr. Sherry Belafsky is our medical director for Healthy Davis Together, and she's done a tremendous job of putting together a team that's running the testing sites now, and then has pivoted aggressively over the last couple months as vaccines have become available, and as we've been able to work with the Yolo County Public Health Officer, Dr. Sisson, who's terrific, be able to work with her about how we can play a role in vaccine delivery. Vaccine delivery is tough right now. I mean, I think everybody's seen in the news, right? It's hard to know what's coming, the distribution from the federal government to the state government to the county, and then what role providers play in that. Sometimes the county knows what the providers are getting. Sometimes the county doesn't know what the providers are getting. Now CVS and Walmart and other pharmacies are playing a role in getting delivery of vaccines. And Dr. Sisson, the Yolo County Public Health Officer, is doing her very best to coordinate and organize that. And she's doing a terrific job. But it's hard, right? They don't have, I think, as much information as they would like to have about what's available. And Mike's right. The tiering and who's available within those tiers, that's up to Dr. Sisson. And she's done a very good job of aggressively getting vaccines to the most vulnerable populations as she gets access to them. And we've done, especially with Dr. Belafsky's help, we've done what we can to help her. But as more vaccines come and as those tiers open up, it'll be up to Dr. Sisson, right, as to when those people are available.
Right. And one thing I literally just got word on while we were talking is the state, it sounds like the state just announced that those 50 and older will be eligible for receiving vaccines starting April 1st. And then those 16 and over 2 weeks after that. So that, the good example of how the information is constantly flowing, constantly changing and being updated. That doesn't mean the vaccines are going to be available, however, and that's the key distinction, is being eligible versus the vaccines actually being available to everyone who is eligible. And oftentimes there are differences there between those.
Well, we got a comment from someone watching. Heather on Facebook says, as a longtime resident of Davis and a longtime employee of UC Davis, I'm extremely proud of the work that UC Davis and the city of Davis have done to create a model that will not just help our community, but help other communities as well. So, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that same way. Have any other college towns contacted you, maybe hoping to replicate what you're doing in Davis right now?
We've been contacted by other college towns. We've been contacted by other local towns, other school districts about trying to replicate some of what we're doing. And like I mentioned, one of the big goals of our project is to develop a playbook that other towns and universities can use either currently or in the future to help with managing this pandemic or future ones.
And just to wrap up, I mean, what lessons or aspects of Healthy Davis Together do you think will stay with us even after this pandemic is over?
Well, I'll start with that one. I think it's the collaboration, really. This is and what opportunities are, we've been able to create through the collaboration and really working across jurisdictional boundaries and so forth. I mean, this has really demonstrated the power of teamwork and the ability to bring sort of what would otherwise be things that would be impossible to deliver independently. When we work together and pool our resources and pool our expertise and our facilities and our knowledge and so forth, what we're able to accomplish as a team is incredible. I think that's what's been, to me, that's one of the big takeaways from this undertaking and this effort has been, hey, when we put our minds to it and we pool our resources and we organize around that and have a common mission, a common objective, we can accomplish all sorts of wonderful things.
I'd echo that completely. And I careful. I'd like to point out too that it's not just the university and the city, right? It's the business community. It's the Yolo County Public Health Department has been a critical partner for us. There's a bunch of partners, or Davis Joint Unified School District. We have to be able to partner with a variety of different organizations and able to effectively implement a lot of these strategies, right? Because even if you just want to offer free testing, you can't just put up a sign and say, hey, free COVID testing and expect everybody to come right away, right? So you've got to work with these different organizations to get the word out, to motivate people, to help them understand what it is, and to get them to try it. The thing also that two things that I hope will come out of this, right? One is environmental monitoring, wastewater monitoring, and other types of environmental monitoring are going to be critical for us in the future, not only during this pandemic, but any others, to sort of screen and monitor. How is this going? And what's happening, with any future pandemic or future viruses or infectious diseases of concern. Wastewater is a terrific way to do sort of community-wide screening at a very low lift for any individual in the community, right? It's very easy. The other thing is that I hope we learn that public health departments are really important to be funded, right? And to be supported by whether it's the federal government or the state government or other local agencies. A good, effective public health department is so important to maintaining, community health and safety during not only a pandemic, but just other times, right?
Right. And not to wait to fund it when the pandemic has already happened, right? You have to have
You're a little late,
the public health department at all times, because you don't know what might crop up.
Couldn't agree.
Exactly right. Yeah.
All right. This has been really great. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your work.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having us on today.
Todd Stoltz is Director of Business Development at UC Davis Health and part of the executive team at Healthy Davis Together. And Mike Webb is City Manager for the City of Davis and co-chair of the Advisory Committee for Healthy Davis Together. On the next UC Davis Live, we'll look into how researchers are exploring effective ways to keep students, teachers, and their families healthy when schools return to in-person instruction. Until next time, I'm Satirius Johnson, and this is UC Davis Live, COVID-19.